İsmiz? Okay. So, good morning, and thank you for joining us for this event. It has been a while we have organized the event at GFSIS, thus we are really delighted to welcome you at our premises. So we will be discussing today developments in Karabakh after 2 years since the end of 2020 war. While we were planning for this event, the circumstances were different. And we kind of hoped, maybe too optimistically, that we might meet the new year in a new reality. But as we all watch the process, it has been uneven. Whether there will be durable peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan is the key question for the security of the South Caucasus. And people of Georgia, including its ethnic minority communities of Azeris and Armenians, wish for the lasting peace between our neighbors. This will deprive the important tool of Russia to influence dangerously the states of the South Caucasus. But besides Russia, this will create the completely different environment enabling for peace and stability and prosperity for the region. Due to this and other reasons, we are watching carefully and with great interest towards the development in our neighborhood in Armenia and Azerbaijan. And we are grateful that our colleagues from Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey have responded positively to this, our initiative, and are here today with us. We will be discussing the possibility of a breakthrough and, in case of success, the regional development opportunities. Our speakers for the first panel do not quite need introduction. They have been part of numerous discussions both at GFSIS as well as other events in Georgia for years. Alexander Iskanderyan is the director of the Caucasus Institute in Yerevan. Since 2005, he is a prominent political scientist focused on post-Soviet transformation, nation building in the Caucasus, and we all have read numerous articles by him on those topics. Ambassador Farid Shafiyev is the chairman of the Center of Analysis of International Relations under the administration of the President of Azerbaijan. And okay, thank you. But he's a career diplomat since '96. Hold the ambassadorial positions in Canada and then later in Czech Republic. Thank you to both of you, and we are looking forward to your analysis and forecast. But as I mentioned, while planning for this event, we had this more kind of positive sense and for the mediation process. Maybe again we were naive and more kind of optimistic, and it was wishful thinking. But the EU-led process, especially under the mediation of Charles Michel, President of the European Council, was kind of promising. But also in parallel, we saw Russia with a powerful interest to be a mediator. Then the 7th of December talks have been cancelled as Armenian president has demanded France to be included in the mediation, which was obvious that Azerbaijan would decline. And the meeting was cancelled, and there is nothing foreseen. In addition, in parallel to that, now we see the tensions in Lachin. There is a dissatisfaction by Azerbaijani side of Russian peacekeepers, but I would say that there is dissatisfaction from Armenian side regarding the Russian peacekeepers as well for not coming up to the spirit of their mission. So these are the issues which we would be delighted to hear your opinion and update of the situation from your respective countries. And Alexander Maksovich, начнем с вас.
Yeah. Thank you, Eka. I would prefer to speak Russian. They said that it is possible, so if needed, you can take your earphones or whatever. Да, вы, конечно, были чересчур оптимистичны, на мой взгляд, думая, что есть какие-то...
Far too optimistic, thinking that there could be some progress achieved, or there could have been some progress achieved. I have limited time, so we'll try to present some key points about this situation we're in. Thanks God, I have never worked for any government. I'm not going to. This is like my position regarding the process, but I will try to share the perspectives of the society and the elites. I'm not very optimistic about any peaceful resolution, nor am I optimistic about the potential for implementation of a peace agreement if it is signed. And we are really in a very difficult situation because of the shutdown of the Lachin corridor, but I do think that this situation will be sooner or later resolved. But at the same time, I don't think that this is the last escalation or the last wave of tension on the contact line. I think that what I'm going to share, the perceptions are much broader than the actual situation that we are having now. I think it would be far too naive to think that a 30-year conflict could be resolved within a year, a month, or even 2 years, just because there is some will to have it resolved. The problem that is at the heart of the conflict still stays there after the end of the 2020 war. Actually, none of the parties was fully satisfied. Azerbaijan won the war, but Karabakh still exists, and people living there are not eager, are not going to take Azerbaijani passports. These are people speaking another language, using another currency, another banking system, and Azerbaijan in reality cannot control this territory. And of course, Azerbaijan is not happy with that. Armenia neither is happy because the situation there is very complicated. And after the 2020 war, I would not call this conflict a Karabakh conflict, but rather a conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, because the clashes that have been recently happening have not been happening on the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic territory as such, but on the border of the Armenia proper and Azerbaijan proper. So if we compare what is happening on the border to what we previously had, of course it's apparent, and we can also read about this. And I have visited the locations several times, so I could see with my own eyes what was happening there. So I can tell you that the Azerbaijanis take some parts of the territory, like some parcels of land, and nobody knows why they need them. But if we analyze it, they need them for strategical purposes to confirm their governance there. So, but we can think that maybe Azerbaijan also wants to put pressure in preparation for a new war. So if we speak about a peaceful agreement, I think that this is a false dichotomy of a peaceful agreement either to be or not to be signed. The major point is, what do we understand under peaceful agreement? Armenia's perception that Azerbaijan does not need Karabakh, of course, is very broad and very holistic, I would say. And again, if we perceive the text, the peaceful agreement as such, as a way to grasp Karabakh, then I would say it's more logical. So I think that in any way a peaceful agreement is not a good way to find a consensus, whereas Armenia so far is opposing a non-consensual agreement. Another conflict is the conflict of time paradigms. Azerbaijan wants this problem to be solved here and now. Of course, it's rational, it's understandable. I think any politician in Aliyev's shoes would do the same. But again, it usually depends on how the situation develops after the elections in Turkey, how it's going to develop in Iran, in Ukraine, and I don't mean the Ukrainian issue as such, but the conflict between Russia and the West that is being generated through this Ukrainian war. So that would also directly affect what is happening in the region. On the other hand, Azerbaijan would try to transform this conflict into the format of discussion and will try to have it result in a way so that it would suit all the sides rather than be a sign of pressure. So actually, Azerbaijan is calling to transform the situation to the one that existed pre-war, but again, these are the objective discrepancies and divisions between the sides. Some time ago, the Prime Minister of Armenia said that they wanted to sign a memo, not a peaceful agreement, but some memorandum on peace. But memorandum is not an agreement. Signing a memorandum means actually signing some document with very general, very broad words, and then some specific agreement should follow. But the sides are not ready for that. So we have what we have, and we had a similar situation before the second war in Karabakh, and now I think the situation is getting even worse. And I want to briefly say what is the role of external powers in this conflict. So external powers or external forces are Europe, the West, Turkey, and Russia. These are the major players, again, with all due respect to others. And these are the players that could play a role in this situation. In Armenia and in the Armenian government, even despite the attempts to carry out some Armenian-Turkish process, still there is no perception in Armenia that, well, Armenia has Azerbaijan and Turkey that they border upon. No, they perceive these two countries as two Bakus, may I say so, because Turkey is totally supportive of Azerbaijan. This is a way for Turkey to penetrate into the South Caucasus by providing support to Azerbaijan. Of course, Armenia feels very uncomfortable because it is facing, actually, it's very similar requirements on both sides. Now about Europe. Europe, partially the United States, could provide a platform for negotiations, could provide expert support, consultancy, financial support, well, all kinds of support, I would say. This is what they can do, but these are all political forms of influence that are so far missing. These are calls, talks, attempts to calm down the sides, and Mr. Aliyev knows it really well that the West would not use any other forms of restriction. There are no restrictions from the West that would really benefit the situation or that would promote the situation. This is what we call the salami tactics. So this is just slicing the territory piece by piece and occupying it. Now about Russia. Russia has its armed forces along the line of contact, though I would say there are about 2,000 Russian soldiers there, and around them there are about 50,000 Azerbaijani soldiers. So I would not say that this is really a strong force, even if we consider the Russian military base and everything there. But this is sort of a pressure because we know that Russia is a permanent standing member of the Security Council, and so it really matters. Why it matters? Because of the Ukrainian war as well, because the role of Russia, its importance and its capacity to address different challenges other than in Ukraine is very limited today. And this is why it is happening. So I would say a lot depends on what happens in Ukraine, how the war in Ukraine ends, if it continues, and because it's gonna have a very strong influence of not only our region, but what is happening globally. So I cannot foresee an optimistic scenario. I mean optimistic for Armenia, for the Armenian side. Well, I cannot foresee it really. I think we are in the midst of an unfinished process, of an ongoing process. And I think that today we realize that only will is not sufficient for the parties to sit down, sign an agreement, and later comply with it. Thinking so would not be just serious today. Maybe I'm mistaken. I would be glad.
Talking in the last point, you were talking about the and foreign actors. Let me ask one additional question before we proceed to Ambassador Shafiyev. So like 2 years ago, immediately after the war, in one of your interviews with the Ukrainian media outlet, you mentioned that the outcome of the war will not affect Armenia's foreign policy, and that it depends on different circumstances, and none of the leaders can do actually that. And after 2 years, now, you know, all those developments, and first of all, war in Ukraine, the disappointment with CSTO. So Russia's security umbrella did not work to deter Azerbaijan. Disappointment with peacekeepers. So what is your position now? Are you still on the same position?
It was not just like that. I said that it's not depend on people. It's not about persons. What I said that time, I don't remember concrete interview, but I talked a lot about that and even wrote. Nikol Pashinyan, when he was in opposition, he voted against Armenian unification with Eurasian Economic Union. They, in his party, they produced documents on Armenian withdrawal from CSTO. Immediately when he became prime minister, even politicians usually do like that. But he said, they asked him, a journalist asked him, well, he asked, or she, I don't remember, but you said different things when you were in opposition. And he said, it doesn't matter what I said when I was in opposition, because it's not depend on chair. It depends on chair, not on person. That's what I was saying. This can change, but this will change not because of Pashinyan will go and another person will come, or third, fourth, nationalistic, non-nationalistic, liberal, etc. It depends on the situation. Situation is changing, but it is changing not because you have this or that person in a chair in prime minister cabinet in Yerevan, but because situation around is changing, Russia, Ukrainian war, etc.
And Ambassador Shafiyev, so can you give the Azerbaijani position regarding the negotiation process? Also, while being in Baku, I got this understanding that official position, maybe diplomatic position, was that these two processes, EU-led and the Moscow mediation process, were kind of complementing each other. But as we saw, Moscow's position on postponing Karabakh issue for indefinite future is against the Azerbaijan national interest. And so how can you elaborate on that with other things as well? Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Rondeli Foundation, for organizing such events. On several occasions, I had pleasure to meet with Alexander Iskanderyan, and I believe this kind of dialogue between experts is important. It's not that the civil society is going to make any changes, but I'm not speaking more about civil society. I'm speaking about the expert dialogue, at least to understand positions to each other, and also just general to have discussion, especially in the view that we might speak about trilateral format. I will come to that later. But before, I'll try to be brief. I prepared a presentation, and I'll shrink it to fit in 7-10 minutes. We need to understand where we are, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yes, I agree that the overall dispute over Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, it's internationally recognized. But if we look at the history, we should understand where Armenia also, where their demand is coming. So we have this kind of three-stage process. First, it began with Miatsum. It means unification in Armenian language. And it lasted until the collapse of the Soviet Union. Even the Soviet parliament, Armenian parliament, adopted a decision to unite with Karabakh, with Armenia. But after the collapse, this kind of unification was not possible in terms of the international law, and it had negative connotations. So in our process began about self-determination, getting independence for Karabakh, which ended with the Second Karabakh War, and now Armenian speaks about remedial cessation. So the cessation of Karabakh for the sake of, to save people, etc. So this is the rhetoric of Armenian side. Again, we're speaking about, indeed, from our perspective, it's territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. From Armenian perspective, it's the Karabakh. And basically, the leaders of Karabakh Armenians once again said that in the future, if they, let's say, get independence, the road is to be united for Armenia. I will skip historical part because we don't have time. So we have negotiations track, peace treaty. Fundamental core of this peace treaty is the mutual recognition of territorial integrity. It's the bottom line. It's simple, but at the same time complex, because again, we have Karabakh as a disputed issue. The second track is delimitation and demarcation of the border. And of course, you cannot delimitate the border if you don't recognize territorial integrity of another country. So this is how it's done practically in international relations. You have diplomatic relations, you have, can we get back to, yes, it's disappeared, yeah. So that's about delimitation. And then another important issue is opening of transportation links. It's also in trilateral statement of 2020. We have a Lachin corridor there, Article 4, and we have Article 9, which is not using the word corridor, but it has some, I'll come to that later, some provisions about the unimpeded movement of goods and people. A number of issues remain within, let's say, I put them in number 4, humanitarian issues. It's landmines, for Armenians, it's important the fate of the Armenian detainees. For us, it's important the missing persons from the First Karabakh War. Both countries claim about the damage to cultural heritage, some ecological issues, and some other. Another important, but probably that's for the future, is the reconciliation between two peoples. In parallel, we have the potential of Armenian-Turkey dialogue. For Azerbaijan, the issue of Karabakh should be resolved within the constitution of Azerbaijan. And it looks like, at least this year, 2022, began quite promising, because we gave proposal to Armenian side, and the Prime Minister Pashinyan responded positively to these 5 items proposal. However, a lot of has changed from beginning of 2022, and we came by the end 2022 indeed with a bit of a negative connotation. And I believe the main spoiler of this process was Russia. My dear colleague was in Sochi, and he asked the question to President Putin about his vision, and what Putin alluded, basically saying, if Armenia agrees with Karabakh being part of Azerbaijan, and what we can do. And from that time, we've seen that basically negotiations derailed. My assessment that Pashinyan became afraid of internal opposition in Armenia. There is the diaspora factor, and also very important to know that in Karabakh now we have basically Russian oligarch of Armenian origin, Ruben Vardanyan. I should tell you, it's not the public information, but this is what's beginning in October and before. Basically, central authorities in Baku began talking with Karabakh Armenians. We had some contacts, some conversation. Immediately, leader of Karabakh Armenians, Arek Aratunyan, he was called to Moscow. After that, Ruben Vardanyan was planted to Karabakh, and he cut all negotiation process with Baku, with central authorities. So the problems, bottom line, of the peace treaty, mutual recognition of Armenia and Azerbaijan. We have different approaches to delimitation and dispute over notion of corridor. Mutual accusation over heritage and some other humanitarian issues. And of course, another big problem is distrust and hatred. Speaking about delimitation, because the events in September raised the issue that Azerbaijan is attacking Armenian territory, but I would like to remind here, it's not, I believe this is the part where the Armenian claims that Azerbaijan controls Armenian territory. But we have the issue of enclaves. 7 enclaves in Gazakh region belongs to Azerbaijan internationally, but it's under control of Armenia since '91, and another enclave here called Kerki. But also, I should note this enclave, Bashkent we call, it's the Armenian enclave, now controlled by our side. So I think during the delimitation process, not only this issue should be resolved, but this one, and this one. It's a very complex issue. Oh, it's not working. The next slide. Okay. Well, I'll speak. Another issues about corridor. Again, we're referring to Article 9 of the trilateral statement, which speak about unimpeded movement of citizens, vehicles, and goods in both directions. And we're speaking about corridors which are supposed to get here. Armenian side declared that they opening free roads through Armenian territory, but you see it's 700 kilometers we have to cross Armenian territory, instead 42 kilometers. This is what Armenian proposing, and here the question of who is going to provide security for Azerbaijan is crossing through Armenian territory here to Nakhchivan. But here we have in trilateral statement, it will be security provided by the Russians. So we have this mutual differences in terms of to provide access for Armenians to Karabakh and Azerbaijanis to Nakhchivan. Yeah, next slide, please. And we have now about international actors very briefly. I think Russia is not interested in long-term solution. remain important player because they believe that through Karabakh issue they can manipulate over Armenia and also contain Azerbaijan. US looks like proposing, back please, yes, it's, yes, before, yeah. We have United States who would like to make some contributions but has spoilers. Yes, this one, can you keep it for a moment, yeah. And we have quite positive development on the auspices of Charles Michel. Unfortunately, we had spoilers in terms of France because what we had in the last meeting, Macron, it was ad hoc appearance. It was not the format which we agreed upon. The format is Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Charles Michel. That's the trilateral format. We differently view, of course, from Armenian side, they look negatively at Turkey. We believe that Turkey is important balancing power, especially in the view of balancing Russian influence in the South Caucasus and Russian pressure. And we have another important players. We didn't speak much, but Iran, we have now very tense moment between Azerbaijan and Iran. Unfortunately, we don't have time to elaborate on that. But a bit of optimism, I would like to say, potential peace tracks remains between Armenia and Azerbaijan, two platforms. We have Brussels and Moscow. With even, Armenia looks negatively at Russian platform, but again, that's the reality. Russia has leverage in the region and in one way, in another, will remain influential players. Armenian-Turkey normalization process, yes, it's conditioned by the progress on first track, but still, I think also a bit promising. And we have new suggestion, new initiative, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. Azerbaijan and Georgia voiced their support. Recently, Garibashvili and Aliyev met, and both countries. So, looks like Armenia might also join to this trilateral platform. But speaking frankly, again, it much will depend whether Armenia and Azerbaijan will recognize each other's territorial integrity. And basically, that's it. I mean, we can speak about the conundrum of a Lachin corridor, but it's all related to this context. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Shafiyev. And as you were talking about Iran, and did not have enough time to elaborate on that, I also wanted to ask the question regarding the Iran to both of you, actually. And then I'll give the chance to the audience to ask the questions and we'll stop, promise. But how the Iran's strategic perception of the South Caucasus has changed since 2020?
Да-да, я слышал вопрос.
So it is difficult for Iran to influence any legal or formal processes over the Karabakh conflict because Iran is not a member of OSCE nor any other European organizations. On the other side, Iran is not very happy with how situation has changed because it does not have good relations with neighbors. It has Pakistan and Afghanistan in the east, and he's having serious problems with them. In the south, Iran has countries of the Persian Gulf, and they have also Iraq on the other side. In the north, they have problems with Syria. So we shouldn't overestimate it, but we should not underestimate it either. So Armenia is a way for them to contact the outer world. And the real border between Armenia and Iran is now about 43 or 42 kilometers, and Iran is insisting that the situation, the status quo, would remain, and the problem of the Zambezur corridor, so-called Zambezur corridor, is being silenced at the moment because, as Farid has just cited the agreement has a line that says something about opening all communications or connections, but in reality, Azerbaijan does not want to have any connections. It only wants one road, which is actually a road from Azerbaijan to Turkey rather than a road from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan. And they want this road not to be controlled by Armenians. So the potential for Armenians to control this road is perceived as a threat by Azerbaijan. Also, there is this issue of opening a consulate in Kapan, in the southern part of Armenia, by Iran. I think that this is a way for Iran to state that they want the border, the current border, to stay. Again, I repeat, they are not happy with how the situation is developing, and recently it has developed even more critically, again, judging from the discussions in Iran itself and in Azerbaijan. So this is their attitude to this border, and they still keep this attitude.
I think one thing I agree with Alexander, that Iran has maybe limited official leverage on this situation because it's not part of OSCE, it's not part of any mediation. However, in terms of relationship, especially with Azerbaijan, yeah, indeed, Iran tried from the 90s to make inroad into Azerbaijan through religious circles, through Shia network, and actually they're working in Georgia too with the Azerbaijani-speaking population. So there is a number of underlying issues between Azerbaijan and Iran, historical disputes, versus secular government, and relations between Azerbaijan and Israel versus Iran and Armenia. Western presence, the Azerbaijan's oil contract with the US and UK. So there are a few other issues between Iran and Azerbaijan, and Iran-Armenia. All these 30 years, when Azerbaijani territory was under Armenian control, Iranians were okay with that. However, the Second Karabakh War really changed the whole situation. And Iranian media is full of articles saying if we'll let Azerbaijan to take full control over Karabakh and, to be strong in the South Caucasus, if we let Turkish-Azerbaijani alliance to get stronger, when we will be completely squeezed out from the South Caucasus. So it looks like this government, especially Raisi government, decided to take on offensive on a pressure tool, but it didn't work, I think. They basically lost, there are some people sympathetic to Iran in Azerbaijan, not many people, maybe 5–10%, even less. But with this kind of development, the number of pro-Iranian people in Azerbaijan went down. I'm speaking about this Shia, not even Shia, but very religious peoples, especially in the south of Azerbaijan, close to the Iranian border. From geopolitical view, they didn't get even support from Russia too, because the Iranian foreign minister, he made a visit to Moscow to get support from Russia, against Azerbaijan, but Russian was not also supportive this kind of idea. So Iran basically remains maybe less getting anything from the South Caucasus, but I wouldn't diminish Iranian influence as non-existent. I think Iranian potential is still, especially to penetrate and through clerical circles into Azerbaijan remains. So that's why Azerbaijan should be vigilant. And also the potential, Iranian, I agree now, they felt they squeezed out of Afghanistan. In the Gulf countries, situation is not good. Syria, Lebanon, after Russian withdrawal from, not withdrawal, but the diminishing power Iran also felt kind of they are under siege. And if country feels like you're really kind of pressed from each side, you never know what they can do, especially in terms of the, if you have some kind of the perception of threat from your immediate neighbor.
Thank you, Farid. And let's give a chance to audience to ask the questions. But Onogia.
Okay, I'm Gia Nodia from Caucasus Institute here and also from Ilia State University. So my question is to Alex. You said that you know, there are certain Armenian policies that sort of depend on objective situation of Armenia that come with the chair, as you said, of Prime Minister. So it does not matter who is sitting in this chair. But there is also symbolic chair of opposition that, you know, by being in the opposition, you should somehow be different. And apparently today's opposition's criticism of Pashinyan, which is sometimes very strong, is that he's not pro-Russian enough or something like that, that he plays too much with the West and sort of alienates Russia, and Russia is the only hope, and so on. So what would be your assessment of that? Is it just kind of rhetoric that just comes from the chair position? Being in opposition, you have to criticize and say something, or there do exist really different visions of how Armenia should behave in this difficult situation in which it finds itself, whether there is some real difference on understanding Armenia's strategy within Armenia.
Гия, я бы не только слово
I would not even use the word real or realistic at all, but would rather stress the word vision, if they have any vision at all. I think both positions are reactive. They are reacting to the problems as they emerge, to the challenges as they emerge, rather than pursue a policy. So I think Georgians, it would be easy to understand for Georgians that Armenia is now back to the situation that it had before 2018. So weak government and weak opposition in terms of legitimacy. So there's today's government, today's parliament, they are not quite legitimate, not because they have a strong opposition, but because their legitimacy is weak whatsoever. So we can understand some constructs that they are operating. This is a construct when opposing forces, they deny the existence of each other. So there is no contact, no cooperation, but rather confrontation. And as regards the position on Russia, I would say it would be a mistake for people beyond Armenia to identify or classify forces within Armenia, judging by their attitude to foreign actors. No, there are different reasons that actually are behind the differences. And when they are blaming each other, it's not because of Russia, the West, but they are actually addressing their counteragents, so that some counterparts or rivals that they are addressing within their countries. And I would say that today's opposition is very volatile, and sometimes they change faster in reality than in rhetorics, because there are some new challenges, and they have to react. They have to go either to Brussels or to Moscow to have these challenges somewhat taken under control. But again, I repeat, this is all internal Armenian rhetorics. When counteragents speak about Russia, Australia, Europe, I don't know what, they in reality mean Armenia, mean the situation in Armenia, or maybe in some cases also the situation in Azerbaijan. You can clearly see it from what they are blaming upon each other. So they always say that their rivals are totally negative, very bad. But they never mention what they themselves are going to do once they come to power. And I think that this is a situation that is quite typical for Armenia, I would even say for Georgia as well. So I would not call it a realistic confrontation or rivalry based on the side's attitude to external to foreign policy.
My question goes to both speakers, and actually it's related to Lachin corridor and the closure. I would like to appreciate your views on what's the ultimate goal of the blockade, because we can see that it was the second time in the month. The first time was for a couple of hours, now it's for a couple of days. And so what's the intention of that, and what is the outcome? How would you explain the whole situation of the actors and the ultimate goal of that behavior? Thank you very much.
I think it should be clear that Azerbaijan's goal is full restoration of administrative control of Azerbaijan over its internationally recognized territory. If we look at the trilateral statement, nothing in that trilateral statement says that Azerbaijan surrender its sovereignty over Lachin or over Karabakh, where Russian peacekeeping is deployed. So, and if we look also on trilateral statement, basically there is the confirmation that the Lachin belongs to Azerbaijan, because it says that Azerbaijan should provide security over Lachin corridor. So now about this closure. I think we have looked at the three elements. First is issues related to ecological problems and resources, extraction of resources. Some people say that why now ecological problems, but if you look, just because Azerbaijan voice never been heard, especially in the West, but on a number of occasions, including our center, we had the briefings for foreign diplomats. We brought attention, and we have report on our website on situation with the illegal exploitation of our resources. So there is the gold mines and some other mines which Armenians extract, and during their occupation it was extracted, taken away, and still continues. The second issue, I think Lachin corridor, it's also clear in the statement, it's for humanitarian purposes. What we see that it's used for military means. We see the movement of people, and we can control it through now the satellite and also the cameras. The part of Lachin corridor crossing a city near Shusha, so you can see with your own eyes that there is some Armenian military installations in Karabakh, appeared new one, there is new equipment delivered to that region. And the third one, of course, the issue of transportation network per se. My dear colleague says that Azerbaijan didn't open none. I wouldn't say. We have, Lachin corridor was functioning. There was another route, Goris-Kafan, which was functioning 1 year even free of charge, but then we imposed some fees, but still it can be used. And what we see from Armenian side, that this Zangezur passage, okay, not to call it corridor, but Zangezur passage is not going on. So Armenian side refuses, saying that, you know, the Azerbaijan wants extraterritorial control. We don't want extraterritorial control. And should be clear, this is a huge misunderstanding. Anyway, this corridor will be controlled by Russian forces. Why this? But basically the whole border of Armenia is controlled by Russian border services. So that's also would apply to that segment. So these three elements created the tense situation over Lachin. But there is one more element, and in particular it's Ruben Vardanyan. As I said, we had quite the beginning of dialogue with Karabakh Armenians before he arrived. And President Aliyev raised this question with Putin in Sochi in private conversation. And Putin said, I don't know anything about this. And this is, of course, nobody believes that the Russian Armenian origin and Russian oligarch would renounce its citizenship and move to Karabakh and live in the area where Russian peacekeepers controlling without Russian approval. So that's the fourth element of today's tension. And I believe before Azerbaijan will get something in terms of its demand, this limitation of movement, because it's not fully, by the way, closed, the limitation of movement will remain in place. It's my vision.
Я не готов серьезно говорить.
Well, I'm not ready to seriously discuss environmental problems. I don't think that this is an environmental problem at all. It is a form of putting pressure, and Azerbaijan is now putting different kinds of pressures on Armenia. One of the forms of putting pressure is eternal discussions about Nagorno-Karabakh, whether Nagorno-Karabakh ever existed as a separate territory. Now they actually oppose the use of the word Nagorny and prefer using just Karabakh instead. Second, Armenia and Azerbaijan do not have any diplomatic relations, so they need mediators or third parties to contact each other, be it Russia, Turkey, Europe, or else. Then another form of putting pressure is escalation. Escalation like in spring, in summer, then in September. In September, for instance, during the clashes, about 2,000 Armenians were killed. Cities and towns were bombed that are quite far from the border. And I think they are really very creative in using different forms of putting pressure. And this environmental form of putting pressure is also very efficient, like environmental activists blocking some gas pipelines or roads, etc. I think this is a way of addressing some problems that cannot be addressed otherwise. And, well, let me say, I think that today some closed talks are being held to address the issue of the Lachin corridor. Azerbaijan's requirements include peaceful agreement. I would call it so-called peaceful agreement because from the perspective of Yerevan, a peaceful agreement that would make Azerbaijan happy is actually recognition of Karabakh problem as an internal issue of Azerbaijan. And that would be a step to the withdrawal of peacekeepers, and the withdrawal would be a step towards ethnic cleansing of Armenians on this territory. Because, of course, ethnic Armenians that are not recognized as military criminals could take Azerbaijani passports and could stay there. But frankly speaking, these perspectives are not seriously perceived in Armenia because 38,000 people who stayed after the war on the territory that was occupied, that was taken by Azerbaijan, were either killed or had to flee. They never received any Azerbaijani passports. So I don't think that this perspective is realistic. Second requirement of Azerbaijan is the corridor, and they want people and goods to move on over the territory of Armenia, so that Armenia would have no control over them in reality. Of course, so far they have not proposed Azerbaijani armed forces to control the corridor. Supposedly they want Russian peacekeepers to control it, but anyway, they need somebody to protect this territory from Armenian control. And generally, as your history of Europe shows, I don't believe in corridors as a way to peace. For instance, there is a Russian corridor to Kaliningrad, for instance, and some trains are moving there. But has it ever improved the relations between Latvia and Russia, for instance? I think in order to improve the relations, you need to ensure open communications with people moving over the territory, exchanging currency, buying lunch or dinner, selling or buying things. And it's clear that this is not achievable now. So Armenia, again, perceives this idea of having such a corridor as a form of putting pressure. Why am I discussing it in so much detail? Because this is not a tactics, but this is rather a strategy. And I don't think that this issue would disappear from Azerbaijani's policy or Azerbaijani's strategy in the nearest future. And I think as time goes by, more and more elements would appear, I mean, around this problem of the Lachin corridor, so that they would urge Armenia to sign a peaceful agreement. Today they are using environmentalists, tomorrow they might use, I don't know, nurses, but these are just forms of putting pressure. And the purpose is clear, I think.
Madloba. Вопрос господину Искандаряну. Бросилось в глаза, или вернее бросилось в уши, то, что посол Шафиев несколько раз упомянул Рубена Варданяна, а ты не упомянул его ни разу. Меня интересует с внутриармянской точки зрения, насколько это серьезное, обладающее потенциалом.
Ask if Ruben Vardanyan, I mean, is a serious, influential power figure today within Armenia. And do you think it would be possible to consider Vardanyan Kosharyan and Pashinyan Arutunian as two tandems facing each other? Are we on the Chatham House rules? No. Okay, just tell me the truth. No Chatham House here, right? No. Okay. Well, so, you know, I never mentioned Vardanyan because I don't think that this phenomenon is really significant. There are different perspectives at that within Armenia, and what Farid mentioned here is also a widespread opinion that he is a pro-Russian agent, but I don't see the point of sending such a pro-Russian agent to Stepanakert. I don't think there are any forces, military forces there that would need Vartanyan to sort of control them or refrain them. I don't think that there is a need to use Vartanyan to change the situation. Again, that's my personal opinion, and I know that in Armenia, many people think differently. I know him personally. I can see the dynamics of his behavior, his conduct within Armenia. Sometimes this dynamic is very clear, sometimes it's not so clear, but I would say that it's quite understandable for the elites. So Vardanyan has his own perceptions of how he could participate in politics, and he has had them for quite a while. He had some plans in Armenia that they were not so successful, I would say, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I think I'm right. I think that now this is his way of participating in the events and penetrating into the political realm in Armenia. Could he be successful in Karabakh? Yes, I think he could. For instance, in a scenario where Mr. Artunyan participates less in politics and Mr. Vardanyan participates more in politics, could be possible. I can imagine such scenarios. But Vartanyan's participation in the policy, the politics within Armenia, well, I don't think it's possible unless any force majeure happens. I think if he goes to Karabakh, if he goes to Stepanakert, he would distantiate himself rather from the internal politics in Armenia rather than get closer. And I do not see any chances for him to partner with Pashinyan. Again, State Secretary, this, according to the Karabakh Constitution, this is an office equal to Prime Minister, but more of a managerial kind, you know. It's clear that he has some experience in management because he's a businessman. So he could progress somewhat in Nagorno-Karabakh, but not in Armenia, not at the political arena of Armenia. I don't support the idea that he is an agent, he is a spy, sent in. I think that this is the idea more supported by Azerbaijan. And I would say that this is just a motive, not the real reason, not the real cause. And there are different causes, you know.
Thank you to the Rondeli Foundation for organizing this event and to the speakers for sharing their views with us. Very briefly, from the Turkish perspective, we always wanted to see an inclusive space of stability, peace and prosperity, shared prosperity in the South Caucasus. And we believe now, after the second Karabakh War, there's a genuine opportunity to actually achieve this. Turkey has always been part of and partner to the South Caucasus. So to say that we used the Karabakh War to increase our influence, I mean, we have always been here. We have excellent cooperation, both with Azerbaijan and with Georgia, bilaterally and on trilateral basis. We have undersigned many joint projects at strategic dimension that change the shape of this geography. And we'll be very happy at one point Armenia will be part of it. In fact, you will recall at the foundation of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, we invited Armenia to be a co-founder and in the greater Black Sea region. As I said, we believe there's now an opportunity to actually achieve this. And of course we support Azerbaijan, but we also support peace and stability and security in the region. That is why we also support the Georgian efforts to bring the Azerbaijani and the Armenian side here in Tbilisi. And also our intention of normalization with Armenia is very sincere. We try to refrain anything that will make that will put Prime Minister Pashinyan in a difficult situation. We are very restrained in our responses, and we try to focus on the positive things he say in this process. This is a separate process. I mean, there are two tracks. That is the Turkish-Armenian normalization, which we want full normalization with good neighborly relations, and there is also the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, they are separate tracks, but they are not happening in a vacuum. They're separate, but inseparable in the sense that we want these two processes to reinforce each other. And if there is progress between Azerbaijani and Armenian relations, it will very much also accelerate the current situation in the normalization process with Turkey and Armenia. So I would say I would prefer to be cautiously optimistic rather than not being optimistic. So briefly, that's what I just wanted to give a perspective how we see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Shorena Lurtkipanidze from Civil Council on Defense and Security and Tbilisi State University as well. Thank you very much for your very insightful analysis and presenting us this multiple reality which exists, these different approaches to the situation. So I would like to ask you how, at what extent the dynamics in the relationship and is guided by the attitudes and impulses you got from your population. So let us just try to think about people not only as an object of violence and something, but as a subject of the processes. Are they also societies? What is your position searching for peace? And how much this process is determined by the attitudes and thoughts and emotions of people in Armenia and Azerbaijan. And the second question is that there is a package from Azerbaijani side, and there is package of certain propositions from Armenian side. But is there any ideas in the existing format to start with something? I mean, first things first, there is very famous proverb or something, British, I think. So is there anything which could really serve as the breakthrough into this conflict? Not in this understanding of full packages, but something, one thing, I mean, from both sides. Thank you very much.
In terms of society, you see, from our perspective, we had 30 years traumatic experience, humiliation after defeat in the first Karabakh War. And I know many people now speak about victorious Azerbaijan should be generous and other stuff. But the things that people cannot return to their territory, to home because of the damage, destruction, and landmines. So there is, of course, hatred. There is animosity. However, as it shows the latest event, there is no I know in Armenians views it differently. They speak that Azerbaijan has appetite for Zangezur, for Yerevan, etc. Yes, we speak about our heritage there. By the way, if we speak about corridor for Lachin, we speak about Karabakh, Armenians living on Azerbaijan, international in Karabakh. When we raise the issue of Zangezur corridor or let's say Azerbaijanis in Armenia, no one left. So immediately we get accusation of irredentism. So I think it should be fair. So society in Azerbaijan has no appetite for territorial gains. It should be clear. All these events, here I can agree, it's kind of repercussion from the lack of peace. But I think the people in Azerbaijan fully understand enough wars, enough conflicts. So that's why we would like to turn the page. Yes, we would like to get our terms. And what is our terms? It's territorial integrity. So there is nothing excessive. That's the first question. Second question about was package, you said, about any new package. Well, yeah, well, we have these 5-point proposals, basically. It's all about, again, basic bottom line territorial integrity. If we can start with something small, you said, maybe indeed the transportation can be, like in Europe, if we recall after the Second World War, the coal and steel became nucleus for European Union. Maybe we can think about something, I don't know, energy, some transportation, opening the lines, can be something, some economic engagement. It can be something which will bring some other stuff. But speaking frankly, if you ask me, without peace treaty, without just basic stuff like recognizing territorial integrity, if we look at the Balkan experience after Second World War in Europe, it's all started with the international arrangement. Without that, it will be hard to develop some really genuine economic interaction, trade or something.
Что касается аттитюдов, поначалу, ну, мы с азербайджанцами поменялись местами. 26 лет их, точнее, не страна, а население, да, находилось во фрустрированном состоянии, просто проигранное.
So, after the war was lost in 1994, there was some frustrated future for Azerbaijan, I mean previously, and after the war in 2020, now it's not our time to feel frustrated. And I would say that 100% of discourses about the Karabakh War, about the relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan have ever been emotional rather than rational. And but recently I can see some other types of attitudes, I would say, in Armenia. I would not call them totally revanchist, but I really think that only crazy people would think that today Armenia is in a position to get back all the territories by military action. So I would not call it revanchist attitudes, but there is a perception there are no partners for Armenia there. And I think that that would prompt the uprise of nationalist perceptions and attitudes, and that's clear. Of course, I know that no conflict lasts forever. All the conflicts sooner or later get resolved. Sometimes they get resolved in a terrible way, but they do get resolved. They end. I mean, I'm not young, so I don't think that I would live long enough to see the Karabakh conflict result. But generally, I would say that in history, there were times that Armenians and Azerbaijanis were at war, but also there were times when they were at peace. But unfortunately, I think, of course, the Azerbaijani-Armenian relations are being further deteriorated, and of course that influences the internal situation in Armenia. I would be very careful with the word democracy, but at least I would say that pluralism of opinions is growing in Armenia, and even we have witnessed 2 cases when there was confrontation between Pashinyan and his team. This is an indication that we can see some definite influence on internal politics resulting from this conflict. I don't know who comes to power tomorrow. It could be a pro-Australian, pro-Western, pro-Russian, pro-Georgian, I don't know, pro-anything person coming to power in Armenia, but this person would anyway have to pay attention to the attitudes in this society, and these attitudes are getting more nationalist, I would say. And we need to do something about that. I'm trying to do my best about that. And by the way, I wanted to use this chance and to thank the Rondeli Foundation for this invitation. I have my particular relations with this foundation. It's not easy for me to fly over here to Tbilisi for a day, but I always take this chance because really I like their position, which is not quite widespread in Armenia, to discuss everything. I think that the minimum program for now would be to stop the shootings there and to stop using hate speech. Because, well, I'm an elderly person, but there are a lot of children, small boys, 18, 19 years old, who are sent into the war, and then dead bodies return to their countries. So, of course, given this situation, it would be unreasonable to believe that as long as these dead bodies, these killed children, keep getting back to their homes, the society would be ready for peace. This is one thing, to stop these shootings. And the second thing is to stop the hate speech, because according to the Azerbaijani rhetorics today, their enemy is not the Republic of Armenia, but Armenians scattered all over the world, Armenians as a nation. And I think if we manage to stop the shootings, if we manage to stop or mitigate the hate speech, then it could lay a basis, a platform, not for peace, but at least for discussions about what is the status quo, where we're at now, what are the potential scenarios for the future. But when you say it in Armenia today, people treat you negatively, I would say.
What do you expect in 2023? Actually, I already have the, Yes.
Ну что, если последнюю за минуту, надо говорить тост, да?
Since the last war between Assyria and Urartu, our region has been unstable, I would say. So I don't pin any hopes to 2023 for a resolution. There could be some decisions made, but I don't think that these are going to be just like real solutions. I don't expect a catastrophe either. I don't think that Karabakh would disappear at all from the surface. But I think that this situation is going to be frozen with escalations here and there, sometimes harsher escalations. The sides, I think, would try their best. Just the Azerbaijanis are going to use this salami tactics, just slicing pieces of land, and the Armenians will try to sustain. And then it's going to depend on what is happening between Kharkov and Izum or Mariupol. I mean, in Ukraine. Because what is happening in Ukraine is absolutely critical for the entire post-Soviet space and for our countries in particular. Thank you. Yes, I agree. So there are several factors influencing the situation. First is the situation in Ukraine, and I think that because of these geopolitical factors, the Armenian government is postponing certain issues rather than trying to get them resolved, because they are waiting for the results of the elections in Turkey and for the geopolitical situation globally in change. And I think that I agree that we have a lot of hate speech. We know also that in Armenia there have been demonstrations and rallies using slogans, Armenia without Turks. Of course, this is also an obstacle, indeed, because there are no grassroots movements for peace. But I think that this situation, there would not be any bottom-to-top peace. It would be only top-down peace. And I think that a lot depends on the government and on the decision of the governments. I think that in perspective, we are planning for a meeting between foreign ministers till the end.
Okay, so uh, thank you for staying with us for the second panel, which is related to the regional cooperation in South Caucasus. I would like to thank the speakers of the previous panel, first panel, with their views, insights, and of course the knowledge they have shared with us about the possibilities, challenges, and perspectives of the normalization of the bilateral relationship between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We will try to go beyond the purely bilateral relationship and listen to the views from Armenian, Azeri, and Turkish very noble and respected experts. What are the perspectives, chances, challenges for the further deepening of the regional cooperation in South Caucasus? Of course, we will consider this in light of the ongoing Russia's invasion in Ukraine, as it was very rightly mentioned at the previous panel, the first panel, that we all are looking closely and following closely the developments. It's 300 days today, exactly, the full-scale invasion in Ukraine of Russia in Ukraine has started. Let us hope, let us project that next year Ukraine will gain another wave of decisive, successful offensive operations and the victories in the war against the aggressor. And of course, with the challenges we are all looking at, there are always the opportunities coming along. So I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce to you, they do not need any big introduction, but still, Dr. Stepan Grigoryan is very well known in Georgia, and not only in Georgia. He is the chairman of the board of the Analytical Center on the Globalization and the Regional Cooperation, with the background of serving as a diplomat, being the member of the parliament. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you today with us, Dr. Grigoryan. Rusif Hoseinov is the head of the director of the Topchubashov Center in Baku, Baku-based center. He is mostly interested and involved in the issues related to the regional cooperation, as well as South Caucasus, as well as in the Middle East, and is known for his articles in Jamestown Foundation and National Interest and other publications. And I welcome Professor Dr. Giray Sadik from Turkey. It's a pleasure and honor that this first time Professor Sadik visits Georgia, and the first time he started his visit in the Rondeli Foundation. I couldn't miss this opportunity to mention this, of course. So let me start with Dr. Grigoryan. What is your view? What are your perspectives about the possibility of the cooperation, deepening cooperation, normalizing relationship, and deepening cooperation in South Caucasus region, please?
Thank you. I will speak on Russia. It's easier to me. Thank you very much, dear Alex, dear Eka. Спасибо большое за приглашение.
Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here at Rondeli Foundation, which is really a think tank and center where we can hear a lot of new ideas, new thoughts, and it's really great that this center plays such a role, not only in Georgia, but also in the Caucasus in general. So I'm privileged to be here. I just want to express my position on Ukraine. I think what is happening is aggression against Ukraine. Unfortunately, we can see large-scale, massive military crime, destruction of infrastructure. A huge number of people are staying without electricity, without heating, and that's really sad. And I think that we need to make steps against these actions on behalf of Russia. And I will address your questions in a while, but first I want to respond to our Azerbaijani colleague mentioned during the first session. Of course, in Armenia as well, you can read some hate speech in the Armenian media about Turks or Azerbaijanis, but public broadcasters that are influenced by the government never use hate speech towards Azerbaijanis or Turks. I can say the same about printed press, and we all know which newspapers are associated with the Prime Minister, with the government. They never publish hate speech. So I agree with Farid that we all need to do a lot in Azerbaijan and in Armenia to mitigate the rhetorics, but there is a difference. In Azerbaijan, this is an official policy. And I think that a lot needs to be done there, and in Armenia as well, we need to work with the public to eradicate hate speech. Also, we discussed a lot peaceful agreement during the second session. So you imagine they show us some template for a peaceful agreement tomorrow. That would include delimitation, demarcation issues, corridors. Again, I say corridors conditionally, and I will explain myself later. And this agreement would not include the issue of Karabakh. So I think that on other issues we would pretty well arrive at an agreement with our Azerbaijani counterparts, but these three are the key points. By the way, our Azerbaijani colleague showed us a map of enclaves. So I actually used to dig into this issue quite deep in the past, and I discovered the following situation. For instance, there was a village or two villages, two communities, Azerbaijani or Armenian communities, and for instance they needed some pastures, so they agreed between themselves to divide some areas for grazing, and later it was reflected on the map. So for instance, if we take a map of 1974, 1991, if we use these maps, that would not be legitimate, would not be legal, and would result in conflicts tomorrow. Again, these are not huge territories. These are just like dozens of square meters. But again, these could lay a basis for conflicts later. And I think we need indeed to address this issue. You showed a good map, thank you, but in reality there are no Azerbaijani or Armenian enclaves in reality. And by the way, we used some maps that are dating back to the Soviet time. Those maps were signed by Armenia, by Azerbaijan and Russia, and again, if we use the maps dated 1974 or 1991, believe me that tomorrow we would have a conflict over these territories again pretty soon. And there would be a demarcation issue again, and you will address the court in The Hague to have it resolved. And by the way, all our countries have signed a demarcation agreement at the international level that says that the maps and the administrative borders, respective administrative borders, are not finally set. This is a widespread practice. You know, there are some arguable, disputable territories between Ukraine and Russia, between many other states. But if we want to have a stable, a sustainable peace, we need to pay attention to some small details. And now about terminology. The people use the word corridors. Armenians are against using this term. And I think what we need to say is ex-territorial areas. So very frequently, when we say we are against having a corridor, people start saying, well, why are you against it? That's just a road. No, for us, it's not a corridor. For us, it's extraterritorial area. And here is where our views part with Russia. For instance, in Armenia, we call it Mehri corridor. In Azerbaijan, we say Zangezur corridor. So it's clear why Azerbaijan needs this road, because they want to connect to Nakhichevan. And that's quite understandable, and I think that is something to be done. But why? What is Russia's interest in having this corridor? So again, they are under sanctions. They do not have direct access to Europe. And they need some bypass to transport the goods to Europe. And I think they can see this railway as a good option for this purpose. And I think that in future their plan is to transport goods to Nakhichevan and then to Turkey. Another reason for Russia is to control this territory, because that would give them a lever to influence Azerbaijan, Armenia and Turkey as well. So that's their interest. But at least as I can see it, I think it's not the pressure from Azerbaijan, but more pressure from Russia on Armenia. You remember Russia even proposed building a wall along the Mehri corridor. I don't know what how they were planning to close the border with Iran for Armenia. Who knows? But again, and now Azerbaijan says we have resolved the issue of Karabakh, so we don't need a peaceful agreement. We all know the United States' position on this. And by the way, the Washington format is very important. That involves the foreign ministries of Armenia and Azerbaijan and the U.S. State Secretary. So the Americans are telling us, or at least this is how I understand them. So they say, okay, let's continue the dialogue on issues beyond Stepanakert. So this is what I wanted to share in general, and now I will try to address your questions. So first, peaceful agreement, what would it give us? Well, I'm not quite sure that peaceful agreement would be possible in the nearest future, but I don't know really how Nikol Pashinyan would sign any agreement, even if he's willing to, after the Lachin corridor is blocked. I'm not going to speak about whether it is legitimate or not right to block this corridor. Again, this is just a fact, and I think that amidst this fact, Pashinyan would not be able to sign anything at all. From my personal relations with Pashinyan, I can say that he's ready he is ready to make compromises, of course, except for some red lines that he definitely has. But now he's not in a position to sign anything because of what is happening in Lachin. Because this is a violation of an agreement between Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan that we had in the past. Again, another issue is Turkey. In the Armenia-Azerbaijani context, Turkey has its conditions. They want Armenia to come on terms with Azerbaijan. And of course, with Turkey being an ally of Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan is increasing their conditions. Again, Russia has proved to be an unreliable partner because for 30 years Armenia voted together with Russia on different international issues. But today they are telling us, sorry guys, but our interests no longer coincide on issues of security. And again, this idea of tripartite negotiations, that Georgia has proposed to offer a platform. By the way, this is also one of our platforms. This is a Georgian platform at the level of expert, but we know the Georgian government also has proposed an official platform, and you know that the first meeting with Mirzayan happened in July this year here in Tbilisi. So, of course, this is a positive thing, but I think that actions should follow the words. After Azerbaijani's agreements or some talks with Azerbaijan, again, you remember what happened in September. Azerbaijani troops again entered the territory of Armenia, so we can see some discrepancy between words and actions. So if we speak about tripartite agreement, I don't think that Azerbaijani's military action on the territory of Armenia would really foster or prompt any agreements whatsoever. Again, I am a physicist, a quite famous one in the past, a nuclear physicist. So in physics, we have Newton's law, for instance, or Newton laws, 4 of them. One of them says, if you hit on a body with an object of a certain mass and certain force, then the object starts to move. Again, proportionately to the applied force. So I can apply the same law to politics. Then there is mediation by the EU, for instance, by Charles Michel or Charles Michel and Macron. Or, for instance, mediation is provided by the United States. Then the war stops for a while, for a month or two. And Aliyev and Pashinyan act very adequately, I would say. But once Russia is the mediator, the peace ceases and everything results in some clashes. So that's, again, I would say it's similar to the laws of physics and laws of nature, I would say. So I think that we should really emphasize the mediator's role of Europe and the United States. Sometimes in Armenia, they say, well, what you are saying is correct, but here, look, we have only Russians here on land, on the ground, Russians as peacekeepers. And recently, we can see some foreign peacekeepers from the West, so this monopoly of Russia for peacekeeping has been violated, has been skewed. So we can see also some practice, not only theory. And I agree with my colleagues from Azerbaijan and Armenia who spoke on the during the first session, and I can say that today's situation in Ukraine has distorted the situation overall because Russia has sent all its troops and army to Ukraine and has lessened the influence on our region. So I think that opens a window of opportunity for us, and maybe we can agree on something. I can hear pessimistic opinions about the potential peaceful agreement. I'm not so pessimistic, but I think we should be rational, we should be careful. We used to make mistakes in the past, before 2020, and now Azerbaijan is repeating our mistakes after 2020. So I think we should learn from our mistakes. And now one thing about Ukraine. Of course, Russia today is weaker. They can do less in the region, but I think they could prevent the blocking of the Lachin corridor. They did not. That means it's in their interest. They want the clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan to continue. And one more thing that I want to mention. Many fail to understand why Russia is so much against Armenia now. But it's clear to me. Putin's Russia hates revolutions and revolutionary movements. They don't like people who come to power through revolution, who want to do reforms, who are implementing reforms.
ОДКБ очень часто говорить о демократии, да, ОДКБ.
So the so as Pashinyan frequently speaks about democracy at the CSTO sessions.
Выбирает и так далее, да? Что я хочу сказать?
And Russia does not like it.
Это надо ценить, да. А это Путин.
And Putin apparently does not like it. So, and they even are ready to lose their only partner in the South Caucasus because Putin does not like Nikol Pashinyan. And that's why this is a way for him to fight Pashinyan by means of Azerbaijan, I would say. So I think that a peaceful agreement would be possible, but we should give up some maximalist prospects and plans. And I think that such a peaceful agreement would give us a chance not to be manipulated any longer.
Of course, it's important to build on the statements, build on the initiatives. I would like to ask Mr. Husseinov to elaborate more on the President Aliyev's initiative regarding the trilateral platform. It's really an advantage for Georgia to provide the platform for the bilateral dialogue between Azerbaijan and Armenia. But how do you see the perspectives of realization of the initiative made by President Aliyev? And second, I got your point and message about the international involvement, and Dr. Grigoryan about the more EU and European and US involvement in the process. Do you see also the increasing of the international involvement is a good possibility to deepen the South Caucasian cooperation and to put it versus, as it was rightly mentioned, the spoilers in the region. Ambassador Shafiyev very rightly evaluated the spoilers, the particular country. This is the most diplomatic evaluation. I would go further, but I don't want to do it now. Please, Mr. Husseinov.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petrashvili. In my conversations with Georgian colleagues for the past few months, I emphasized several times that Georgia should play a more proactive role in this region, in the regional developments, in the goings on between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And therefore, I'm grateful for Ms. Metreveli and Team Rondeli for initiating such a platform for regional experts. I will go off topic very, very briefly regarding the much speculated peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I am more optimistic about this. I was expecting some document would arrive until the end of this year, but it seems we have to wait a little bit more. But again, I hope that this document will fly like in a few months or so. And the flare-ups, the escalations, some people say amid such, crisis or escalations, a peace deal looks impossible, but I think the opposite way, I think they will come despite and maybe thanks to the flare-ups. A couple of points regarding the possible economic collaboration at regional level. The current situation in the region reminds me very much of the 90s. I don't want to say history repeats itself, but I could draw some parallels because nowadays, just like in the mid-90s, the region is adapting to new realities after a Karabakh War. We have a weaker Russia. Of course, it would be an exaggeration to compare post-Soviet Yeltsin-era Russia with the current one, but we can still see how Russia has reduced its attention to this region because of its present problems in Ukraine. And this situation, of course, creates a vacuum of power, which is seeming very, very attractive for both regional and outside actors. Advent of new economic opportunities and geo-economic projects, again, just like we were receiving in the mid and late 90s, when the first mega projects, mostly energy and transport projects, were first discussed and then implemented. Within this, nowadays, when I say we are receiving, some economic opportunities, again, it's mostly related to the current war in Ukraine, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. You mentioned trilateral platform proposed by the Azerbaijani side. Well, I have an article on this, and it is about Azerbaijan's strategy of trilateral alliances. So it is part of Azerbaijan's policy, usually in tandem with Turkey. We have these triangular constellations on many occasions. With Georgia, it's Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, energy and transport projects. There is a new platform which is emerging, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan and Turkey. You all observed the recent meeting in Turkmenistan. Another triangular constellation, Azerbaijan, has been desiring and pushing for many years. It is Azerbaijan, Israel, Turkey. So these trilateral platforms are not something new for Azerbaijan's foreign policy doctrine. I drew parallel with the 90s. It was a time when these Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan, Baku Tbilisi Erzurum, or Baku Tbilisi Kars projects were initiated. But nowadays, we as a region have received a historic opportunity to elevate into a new level the connectivity projects and become a transport hub between East and West. Because of the war, traditional supply chain lines, which used to go through Russia, they are disrupted. And now, many companies and countries, stakeholders in general, they are trying to look for alternatives. And our region, Central Asia plus South Caucasus, is of course providing these new platforms. So, transport hub, this is a historic momentum for our region, which we have to seize and take advantage of. Recently, you also observed this historic event which took place in Bucharest when the leaders of four countries, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania, and Hungary, they signed a deal on the green energy export from Azerbaijan all the way to Central Europe. This is another opportunity, a new opportunity when we as a region can be engaged in green energy and green technologies. Regarding energy deals, traditional energy deals, after Ms. von der Leyen's visit to Azerbaijan, it seems in the West they look at Azerbaijan as a reliable partner. There is this myth. I don't know who created this, but first they generated this myth and then started debunking it, kind of debunking, that Azerbaijan cannot fully replace Russian gas in the European market. Azerbaijan never actually, claimed it would replace totally. So, but here's the deal: Azerbaijan can replace the Russian gas and reduce dependence on Russian gas in several specific regions or countries in Europe, including EU member states. Of course, with Turkmenistan, it will be a game changer. Now, there is work on this, but I don't know to what extent it can happen because infrastructure-wise, it looks very, very complicated, and I can't imagine who is going to invest billions of dollars into this affair, but at least there is some movement in this direction. Coming back, in the current context, we already have an established infrastructure. Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, again, energy, transport, and we are now switching to green energy. So to be honest, I can't see how we can also connect Georgia to the regional, Armenia to the regional affairs. Or maybe with the opening of this so-called Zangezur corridor, there will arise new opportunities. I remember there was a pre-2020 report by one European organization. They calculated how beneficial a possible, rail and highway between mainland Azerbaijan, Nakhchivan through Armenia could be, but I think it is a bit outdated now, and we must recalculate cost and benefits. I haven't been engaged in this, so I don't know how to evaluate the economic profits of this corridor. You also asked about the internationalization of the region. Of course, in the past 10 years or so, we maybe since the Russian-Georgian war, we have seen how Russia had tried to forge her monopoly in this region. But as I said, a new vacuum of power is emerging, and external stakeholders will come to this region with their agendas. But again, each outside player will have its own agenda, own interests, and not usually beneficial for the regional countries. So in any case, I think this regional platform, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Armenia, should be launched at the highest level. Maybe 3+3 didn't work, but 3 should work somehow. At least we should start as a platform of dialogue between the leaders of 3 countries. And then we can also gradually switch to topical issues about transport, about energy, about other issues. This is all from me. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Husseinov. The 3+3 platform I intentionally did not mention. I think the position of Georgia is clear. I'm happy that so far official Tbilisi is expressing its position, not being ready for being involved in the platforms where is Russia, which is occupying the 20% of Georgia's territories. I hope it will continue that way. I have nothing against, of course, the other platforms you mentioned, trilateral, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia. Today, I think, or tomorrow, the trilateral defense ministerial meeting is taking place in Turkey. And the South Caucasian relationship, of course, is very, very dear for us and important. But how is it seen from Turkey? I think Mr. Husseinov mentioned the increase of a vacuum of power in the region since the war started, full-scale invasion in Ukraine. In my view, and correct me if I'm wrong, this vacuum is mostly filled by Turkey after the war in Nagorno-Karabakh. Yeah. Turkey was always active politically, economically, but it was also evaluated as the return of Turkey in South Caucasus after the war in Nagorno-Karabakh has taken place. So from Ankara, from your perspective, how is it viewed? What are the chances to find the room for Armenia to be involved in this multilateral regional cooperation? Is Turkey really looking through the prism of Azerbaijan-Armenian relationship, the future of Turkish-Armenian relationship? Professor, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your warm hospitality, Alex, Eka, Keti. Great to be in Tbilisi, up to a good start. So let me start by just your question. There may be some misunderstanding for the ones who are not following as closely. Turkey never left the region, so we are the only country with with land borders to all 3 of the South Caucasian states, with Azerbaijan via Nakhchivan, Armenia, and Georgia. This is number 1. Number 2, in terms of Turkey's regional initiatives, Ambassador Shafiyev also summarized. Turkey was promoting from Black Sea economic cooperation to bilateral levels before. And even, let me give you just an example. We were talking that with colleagues. Turkey had a visa liberalization with Georgia before Azerbaijan, for example. So yes, Azerbaijani people, they are our brothers, but Turkey's regional cooperation is beyond that to begin with. Therefore, Turkey is already an insider, so we don't need any other country to enter into region like Russia, let's say, for example. So we are part of the region, and that is why at the heart of my talk today, it will be regional ownership. That is, I underline. Regional ownership to issues, problems, and even to dialogue mechanisms as such. That is why I thank Rondeli Foundation. That is important. That is one of the consensus issues, that instead of having those meetings in Brussels or Moscow or DC, better to have them in Tbilisi, as that also indicates an important regional ownership. So you are not only interconnected geographically, like Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan for energy, but also for hearts and minds wise, that it could be a meaningful cooperation. And speaking of that, Turkey also offers good offices for Russia and Ukraine, for example, to the extent sites use that. And similarly, Turkish role can be regarded as constructive for that region. Therefore, offers another opportunity. Outside actors, we are in the same page with Rusif, come with their own agendas and are likely not always have the priority of the region's best interests, but their own priorities, including sometimes prolonging the conflict. And I agree with Stepan in terms of lessons learned. Let me tell you one important lesson, which is the failure tragedy of the Minsk group, failing for more than 3 decades, preventing the situation in sovereign Azerbaijani territory, one of its participating states. So perhaps that could be a lesson learned, and that, of course, I speak in personal capacity, but President Aliyev's stance on avoiding France of being any kind of honest broker and so on resonates meaningfully in Ankara. Speaking about that, Turkey's position with regard to normalization of issues between Armenia and Azerbaijan, it is not a capricious precondition or something. It's not like Greece asking Macedonia to change their name. It is something very realistic requirement, down to earth. Imagine you want to have secure connection with Azerbaijan, interconnectivity from energy to trade and transportation. If that route is not secure, then all that is in jeopardy, not only for Turkey, but also for the region as a whole. That is also important. And Azerbaijan asking for the security of connecting two of its sovereign territories, whatever the name you call, it's a legitimate security concern and a legitimate claim, therefore. For that reason, we need to pay attention accordingly, because those gaps from inside, and by inside I include Turkey also in the region, are likely to be exploited by outside actors. And here we need to be consistent and principled, because otherwise that leads to the opposite of confidence building, and those cracks are likely to be exploited. Like we are against of Russian occupation of Ukraine, bases or peacekeepers in quote in Georgia. Equally, we must be against of having that in sovereign Azerbaijani territory. Karabakh is a region of Afghanistan, is of a region of Azerbaijan, and therefore any peacekeepers should be only and only with the Azerbaijani approval, which there are temporary by agreements, but that is important to keep that any armed force within the consent of the sovereign state. That's also related with international law. So Turkey's support to Azerbaijan in that regard is in line with international law, and any other forces that exist on the land of a state without invitation should be treated as terrorists. I mean, that is not much questions here to keep in mind. This why I'm saying that openly is also for international actors to perhaps reconsider their existence in the South Caucasus. That way only they can contribute to move things further. What I mean by this, there are challenges and opportunities. One of your questions about Ukraine, also previous panel touched on it. I think challenges are obvious and above all, and they are likely to remain with Ukraine for all of us in the region. And they are likely to remain like a ripple effect, Ukraine, Black Sea, Caucasus, and around wider Europe. But here, this can also be wisely used by all parties as a window of opportunity. Also, previous speakers touched on it. But keep in mind that window of opportunity is not permanent, and actually it is narrowing for the region. And we don't seize that opportunity, then it may be too late. So it could be another lesson learned, Stepan, as well. So I like that lessons learned, not to repeat this. There is American saying, we don't live long enough to make all mistakes by ourselves. So that to keep in mind, it could be one of them. Only after certain degree of stabilization, we can talk about positive agenda, which Turkey have initiated already with Georgia, Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan, and trilateral formats initiated by President Aliyev, and Turkey supports, frankly, most recently with Turkmenistan. But again, one of the basics of international affairs, it takes two to tango. So if Armenia joins that peace project, regional cooperation, it can be win-win for all sides. But that window of opportunity is likely to be limited because of Ukraine war, but because of regional issues such as troubles in Iran as well. So that is one thing. I mean, European countries are having strong words and sanctions when Iran supplies drones for Russia used in Ukraine. Why are not they so loud when Iran supports drones to Armenia and using it in illegal fashion? So we should be careful about those actors who are acting and not acting. Speaking of outside actors, Americans say, good borders make good neighbors. So I think for this region, this can also be applied. And it can be a good starting point. I am not saying that Armenia-Azerbaijan peace deal will solve everything and it will be a magical touch and so on. But it will be a step in the right direction, paving the way for other steps to be taken. As a person doing research on European security, if you ask me what's the key achievement of EU, it's that sphere of peace, that we all see how it benefits the member states. Why not having that in the Caucasus? So that is important. After we have that, then we can talk about the details. Something related also with earlier speakers, we are on the same page. Actions speak louder than words. But same, we should ask them from the Armenian side as well. Like Zengezur, it was part of the treaty after the Karabakh War. And although the side of Azerbaijan opened Lachin corridor, or the Lachin passage, then we see some hampering there. So that it could be. Something from previous session, a lady asked what it could be the miracle thing, what would be expected. Think about Russian peacekeepers. Maybe no peacekeepers, no problem, just food for thought and for everybody, that it could be. Or only to the extent Russian, Turkish, or whoever peacekeepers on Azerbaijan, it should be a matter of their own decision. That's the sovereign state at the end of the day. But I can't remember exactly, I'm not good with Georgian names still, but there was a Russian base and the Russian base disappeared, Armenian problem disappeared from the region. So just food for thought. At the end of the day, we are here to stay as neighbors, and with that neighbors, it is important to be in peace and cooperation. Otherwise, it risks the whole potential of realizing that potential, which offers, partly as a result of war in Ukraine, new opportunities of interconnectivity So those need to be regarded with those lenses. And Turkey is ready to support that, not only with regard to Azerbaijan, but also with regard to Georgia and so on. Here with regional ownership I started, I will end on this. Americans say united we stand, divided we fail. So that we need to be united in our effort to keep our region stable, peaceful, and deal our issues among us, because any foreign interference likely to come with its own agenda and baggage, and more likely to serve the prolonging of the conflict rather than making things safe for the region. I share the cautious optimism, but I'd like to underline cautious part better, because there are reasons for us to remain cautious and vigilant.
Thank you, Professor Sadik. I think I like all your quotations, all American quotations you brought up here. It reminds me about your books about U.S.-Turkish relationship or Turkish-European Union relationship. Also, to not go into further naming about the hybrid warfare, you wrote the book. Thank you very much for your remarks. Now, without further ado, I open the floor for the questions, because my panel's time was hijacked by the previous panel and by the lunch time. So, in the back, Iuliane, please.
Thank you. My question goes to all three speakers. What can you tell us about joint Russian-Turkish monitoring center deployed in Aghdam region of Azerbaijan? What does it do? Do they fulfill their mission? What are the expectations? And what are your assessments of this center? Thank you.
Questions, if you don't mind, and let's collect 3 questions I see here. Shota and then Teona, and please.
This morning and then during the break, we were discussing about how the war in Ukraine, or the Russia-Ukraine war, might affect the situation in the region. We seem to agree that it's such a big shift, tectonic shift, this war, that it will have some effect, but what exactly it will be is still up for debate. And I would wonder what our panelists would think, how this war, how its potential ends, whatever they may be, can affect their own countries in relation with this conflict.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Teona Kvardia, Member of Parliament. I have a question with regard of opportunities in the region. And it goes, again, on the one hand, Russia, and on the other hand, EU. Well, out of 3 countries, Georgia has declared that we want to become EU member. And we are expecting reforms, recommendations to fulfill in order to become EU candidate country and to build democracy. And when we talk about the connectivity and all the stuff, it matters, especially when we talk about role of EU in the peace process and stability of the region. So my question is, how do you think, if Georgia fails or success in terms of Georgia's EU membership path, what kind of effect it will have for region? And another question is, what if we fail and Russia's influences are growing in the region? What kind of effect it might have also in terms of perspective of future as prosperous and stability in the region? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Teona. So let's start with the joint center. Rusif, please.
This is a very complicated topic. A colleague of mine from Topçu Başov Center, she decided to prepare a report on this. And it is going to be probably the first ever research about this joint monitoring mission. She has already presented it at a conference in Italy, but the full paper is coming in a month or so. But data collection process, you know, it went very hard. It took us a lot of time because we wanted to do a field research. We wanted to make interviews with the soldiers and officers accredited there. Formally, it was impossible. We could still manage to speak a couple of people from that center. We also tried to interview several military and political experts, including policymakers from Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Russia. It was also very hard because the knowledge of the center or its mandate or its activities is so limited. What we received from them was what we already knew. And many Russian experts, some Turkish experts, they also were not so much aware of that very center. So right now, since we had several flare-ups and crises on the ground in Karabakh, and some of them were intervened by the Russian peacekeepers who are in the region, but so far we never saw any public statements from that center. Maybe they prepare reports, or maybe they function behind the closed doors. But so far, our findings reveal that that center mostly and unfortunately has more of a symbolic meaning.
Спасибо. Ну, я начну с Ивлиана вопроса.
I will start with the question asked by Ivliane. Yes, indeed, we actually don't know much about what this center is doing. I recall hearing something about mines, but we're not sure. The problem is that this center involves Turkey, and Turkey is apparently pro-Azerbaijani. So even if this center works and operates really well, there would be no trust to it because, objectively speaking, Turkey is not a mediator. I agree with my colleagues that Turkey plays a huge role, but I think that Turkey has a very rigid position, apparently pro-Azerbaijani position. That's why I think nobody in Armenia is going to trust any report of this center if it produces one. So I think that this is just a symbolic monitoring center. Maybe it was established with some future purpose, but I cannot see any at this moment. Now, regarding the question about Georgia. Yes, we think that Georgia's membership in the EU would really benefit Armenia a lot, because then we would have a border on land with the European Union, and then it would be worth signing an agreement on free trade zones, because you remember Armenia refused to sign an association agreement years ago. We now have a very good agreement with the EU, but without a free trade zone. So this is not an association agreement. So the government refused that idea back then because Armenia did not have and does not have any border or land with the European Union. So I think that some people in the Armenian government really think that associate membership of Georgia in the EU, similar to that of Moldova and Ukraine, would really benefit Armenia. And now I want to respond to my Turkish colleague. You know, we really speak a lot and talk a lot in Armenia about the Turkish policies, about how Turkey helps Russia avoid sanctions, but I would not dare say that and reiterate that because it is not confirmed. Similar to what people say about any cooperation, military cooperation between Armenia and Iran. We do have economic cooperation because we have no other way. Our connections with Turkey and Azerbaijan are now blocked and closed, so we have economic cooperation with Iran, and we do not conceal it, but we do not have any military cooperation with Iran. That's why I would say we should never be guided by rumors. Again, I would never reiterate rumors about Turkey or any other country because these things need to be confirmed.
Talk briefly about the issues. Just shortly, it's not a rumor, it's just checking different reactions, so especially of the West. And coming to Agdam, it was part of the agreement at the end of the Karabakh War. And if we're going to talk about the honest broker or mediator and so on, there may be some Armenian concerns about Turkey, but by those standards, Russia is no honest broker either. So let's face it. Armenians acting as Russian proxy in the region, and borders are weighted by that. So what are we talking about to begin with? Number two, also previously with this previous speaker of salami tactic. What salami? Salami belongs to Azerbaijan. It's a sovereign territory of that. So Turkish-Russian agreement, however symbolic in practice, or we don't have information, so I will not comment in detail, but it may be a step in the right direction. Ambassador Shafiyev touched upon it has to come from top-down approach. We like it or not, it is part of this top-down approach. In practice, we shall see how it works. But if it's going to work like as a deconfliction mechanism to some extent, prevent any unwanted clashes, and by Turkish side also contributing, Turkey is ready to make all those contributions, whether in the forms of monitoring mission or peacekeepers. Again, all I think it must be within the jurisdiction and approval of Azerbaijan, because if it's a sovereign territory of Azerbaijan, at the end of the day, Turkey supports states' territorial integrity. So, like Turkey is against having Russian peacekeepers in Georgia, Ukraine, same goes with Azerbaijan. And the difference is they are temporarily stationed based on that agreement. So we should wait and see when their term ends what will happen, because developments on the ground prevent us to be optimistic about Russians and Armenians following the agreements, to put it bluntly. That is why it's important. About Georgia, thank you, Madam Parliamentarian. Turkey supports Georgian integration with the Western parts, including NATO and with Russia, and with EU, including NATO and EU. So, yes, but with the EU, that is why the next thing, Turkey also does have its own experience, which is a lifelong learning for us. So with Georgia, we support it, but no high hopes for that. Again, the previous experiences prevent us to be optimistic, not only for Turkey, but look at the Balkans, for example, look at Bosnia or other places. And I believe you raised a more important question, not only for Georgia, but for Caucasus. Perhaps it's time to think about that regional cooperation achieving at certain level, that why not Georgia and Azerbaijan and Turkey joining together to EU or having that kind of thinking together, because EU is coming to our doors when they need energy. Recent economists think there was a paper, All Frozen Europe. This time Turkey was also fully included. They say yes, freezing together, some comments. So the EU should remember the importance of Turkey not only in times of need, but also for regional cooperation and when planning those issues. Speaking of that, recently Defense Minister of Finland, Kaikkonen, visited Ankara, and he said, we need a paradigm shift in our dealing with Turkey. That is important, I believe. I am glad to see that that paradigm shift already is taking place in Georgia and Azerbaijan, appreciating the increased importance and looking for ways to cooperate further. Hopefully with the peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that could be a more inclusive effort which Turkey supports. At the end of the day, we are on the same boat. So when something happens, we cannot say it's totally their problem or the region's problem. It's at the same time Turkey's problem. That's why Turkey supports Georgia in that regard.
I think the shortest question has been left unanswered. Please, Ambassador, after the shortest question about how you see the projected the end of the war in Ukraine is going to affect the situations in your countries.
Thank you for the reminder. As I started, I just left my microphone and remember Shota. I look and then, yes. So thank you for reminding, Chairman. Well, I think there are few signs to be optimistic to begin with. So we need to be expecting the best, but be prepared for the worst. And it is likely to take a long while. That's why the key words in countering hybrid threats is resilience. So enhancing our resilience at societal level, at civil-military cooperation, but also more important today, at regional cooperation level. We cannot be talking in a sustainable fashion, even in a meaningful fashion, about resilience when there is some sort of infighting in the region. This is number one. Number two, within Russian hybrid strategy, we need to think all those illegal frozen conflicts and armed men or Russian proxies from Lachin to Crimea. Therefore, Russians may resort to extra troubles in the region in a sense of disguising their attacks. So that interrelationship, we should view it more like a table tennis coming back and forth, a series of repetitive games rather than one-shot thing. And in that process, again, I underline regional ownership, because at the end of the day, we see when stakes get really higher, all those big powers get out of the region, and we stay together with neighbors, inshallah, with friends, neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was how the end of the war in Ukraine would influence us regionally or our countries individually. Well, it depends on how Russia emerges at the end of the war. Whether it will be totally broken or left as a wounded lion, which would try to make it up elsewhere. Then it could be more dangerous. Regarding us, Azerbaijan, we have this optimism and cautious optimism about the temporarily stationed Russian troops in Karabakh that maybe the problems in Ukraine would accelerate their withdrawal. In any case, like generally speaking, the time framework for the Russian peacekeepers in Karabakh is one of Azerbaijan's biggest diplomatic achievements, because We have Russian military presence also in Moldova or Georgia, but there is no time framework, so they can stay as long as they want to. But in our case, and it can actually be prolonged, it is a matter of another discussion. But that we have this time framework will always be hanging over their head as a Damocles sword. So when recently I used this famous Turkish saying when referring to possible Russian withdrawal, belki yarın, belki yarından da yakın. Maybe tomorrow or even earlier.
Inshallah. I think it's a small clarification, and with regard to Georgia, Russians have no status of the peacekeepers. They are purely the occupiers of the Georgian territories, and there is no legal basis, and without our consent, they are illegally occupying the territories of Georgia and have their military bases. Dr. Grigoryan, you want to add how the Ukraine war affects, or we could go to the...
Да, Shote вопрос.
Yes, I want to respond to Shota's question because I did not previously. Of course, what is happening in Ukraine has an impact on us. It could not be otherwise because Russia is getting weaker, or at least it seems so. Of course, it's clear that some issues will be addressed without Russia now, but I think that any scenario would result in problems for us. That's why I said that, in my opinion, EU, US, France, Canada should be actively involved. And I think that Armenia, again, should welcome big players beyond the region to be involved. Of course, we know that Russia and Turkey promote the 3+3 scenario, but frankly speaking, we do not have any partners in this 3+3 scenario. That's why we would like to welcome some big actors from beyond the region. But of course, this should not be addressed by force. We need a peaceful dialogue because when people tell us, you know, we need to press for territorial integrity, that's it. I'm always asking these people a question: do you want to eliminate, eradicate ethnic ethnicities? No, this is not a way to do it. We need to negotiate. What was the reason behind creating the OSCE Minsk group? Specifically for the Karabakh issue. Of course, some things where the Minsk group worked well, some did not work so well. It's not now a place and time to speak about self-recognition, etc. We're not naive, we understand everything, but I think we should not only press on the issue of territorial integrity. I respect territorial integrity of Turkey, territorial integrity of Georgia and all other countries. But I don't think that we should play this card of territorial integrity to ruin people, to ruin communities, to block, for instance, the Lachin corridor, so that people would be starving, would be deprived of the possibility to move. I think we should say no to using force. We are all signatories to the Helsinki Acts, to many other international agreements. So I'm all in for a peaceful agreement, a peaceful resolution.
Thank you. Just wanted to underline one thing. When you say, and when the speakers say, Turkey is pro-Azerbaijani, well, yes, but we're not anti-Armenian. So I think there's a big difference there. So you have to take that opportunity. As I said, we are sincere about this normalization. And you should not see it, the whole, I think we should refrain from looking at it from a zero-sum perspective. And also, I think I will caution on jumping to conclusions about a strategic vacuum in the region. It's too early to say that. A shift of focus and priorities does not necessarily equal at the moment to a strategic vacuum in the region. To the extent the involvement of the outside powers helps to solve the problems, yes, we're for it. But we, as Turkey, we definitely do not want to see the South Caucasus as yet another region of strategic rivalry between the Russia and the West. That's going to be very counterproductive. And so that brings me to the issue of regional ownership. Yes, we will definitely support it. But as I say, do not hatch all your policies in Turkey supporting Azerbaijan here. As I said, in general, we support region-wide stability and security, and we want Armenia to be a part of it. And economically, in fact, and Stefan said that the Turkey, there's no excess of Armenia to outside. But it's not entirely true. I mean, if you look at the Armenian statistics, our trade is nearly $300 million per year with Armenia. And most of it through Georgia, which actually reduces your deficit to us because you're re-exporting Turkish material to Armenia. So there is already a basis for regional integration, and I think we have an opportunity, as you said, for connecting again. And as for this talk about corridors, I mean, we actually checked what a corridor means. There doesn't seem to be any internationally recognized fixed definition of a corridor. This is what you make of it. You sit and discuss with your counterparts, interlocutors, and how a corridor functions. During the COVID, we had corridor from Edirne to Sarpi in Turkey. We called it a corridor. It was not an extraterritorial right, but it was simply for the safe and healthy passage of the transportation. So I don't think we should get too much hang up on specific words, but I think, as you said, on the base of regional ownership, the countries need to sit and discuss, refraining from a zero-sum mentality, and to see how we can make this region reach its full potential after losing 3 decades.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for your remarks. Could you please pass?
Спасибо. Я, в принципе, с Александром отрубил в первой части и не собирался говорить.
I was so active during the first session, I was not intending to have a word in the second session, but Stepan has several times referred to my words and commented on that. But in the last comment, you mentioned that the self-determination issue is a primitive issue for discussing it here. So I want to respond to that. You know, of course, the pictures that we are drawing here are different. Alexander has drawn a different picture. You have drawn a different one. It's clear that we have different positions on some issues. That's why I wanted to respond. Self-determination, I don't think it's a primitive thing to discuss. At the official level, Armenia filed a complaint against Azerbaijan that refers to remedial secession. This is something that Armenians in Karabakh say, and this is a changed form of self-determination. So it's not as a primitive thing to discuss. This is the one of the objectives of Armenia. And also, we really believe in territorial integrity, and if you think that territorial integrity would result in ethnic cleansing of the Armenian communities, I think that goes more to Armenia, because Armenia has cleansed the territories of Karabakh from Azerbaijanis. So it goes more to Armenia than to Azerbaijan. So again, you referred to some future plans to 2026. Again, we have different perspective on that, so I repeat that we need to conduct a dialogue on this issue.
Вы знаете, у армян есть такое выражение.
Armenians have a saying that that means, well, I wanted to say something for good, but then it turned out to be bad, to sound bad. So when I said that it would be primitive to get back to the issue of self-determination, what I meant was that the Azerbaijani side is always careful with this issue. So I'm really sorry if I sounded differently, so I by no means want to be misunderstood. I did not mean that what you said was primitive. I mean that on your first slide, you showed the retrospective line of events, so to say, Miatsum, then self-determination, then gaining independence by Armenia. So again, you remember that this issue of Karabakh first was raised. We were all part of the Soviet Union. That's why it was not considered as self-determination, but rather as merging or uniting territories. And after that, after the Soviet Union, we indeed started to mention self-determination, because at the international level, people were asking us, do you have a conflict over territory? And we answered no, it's about about self-determination. But now the reality has changed, so I think we should no longer refer to the self-determination issue only. So I'm sorry if I sounded differently. And of course, we need to discuss things. For instance, I really studied the situation of 1926 and then the situation in 90s. I was really interested to know how all those enclaves actually appeared. You know that we had a sort of a peaceful agreement back during after the first conflict signed by Armenia, Azerbaijan, and there was the issue of delimitation, demarcation, and Armenia agreed to that. And though there are some nuances, and I share the nuances with you. So again, in conclusion, I just want to say that, of course, it's a correct thing to discuss things. You mentioned refugees from Armenia, the Azerbaijani refugees from Armenia. I want to share official statistics. 480,000 Armenians lived in Azerbaijan during the Soviet period, and they had to flee. Part fled to Russia, part fled to Armenia or elsewhere. So it's really a pity that there have been so many refugees from both sides. And I think that when we start sharing arguments, sometimes really we start arguing. But I can say that indeed there were a lot of Azerbaijanis who had to flee the territory of Karabakh. But again, I repeat, there were 480,000 Armenians living in Azerbaijan. But this is not what we should be discussing now. I would like to thank the organizers for giving us a chance to come together here and discuss things openly.
I think what I learned today is that I improved my knowledge of Armenian, Turkish, Azeri proverbs. That's for sure. Second, I was confident after yesterday night when we served with Georgian Tolma that there will be no fight. We served Azerbaijani, Armenian, and Turkish friends, and we survived. So we will survive for sure tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Third and finally, said, nobody wants any Russian peacekeepers in this region, in these countries, and in our neighboring and friendly countries. And I'm sure that sometime soon it will end up with the victory of Ukraine and the removal of the so-called peacekeepers. It didn't really go well with Russian militaries, in particular the the peacekeeper status. Thank you very much. We all know that there are problems. This is good that we can talk, we can discuss, we can debate, and I'm sure the Rondeli Foundation is the best place to discuss these kind of issues peacefully. So thank you very much. Join me in thanking the speakers. Thank you. Thank you all, and wish you all the best.